Rahman Rahim. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce to you Dr. Abdul Rahman Abd. So, Dr. Abdul Rahman Abd is by profession a physician, retired from his practice precisely at the age of 70, and he's also by passion a poet and author of 6 books related to poetry, 5 of which are his original poetry, the 6th is commentary on Iqbal's Shikfa and Jafar Shikfa, which those who attended the Iqbal circle, we went through that as part of our discussion. So as mentioned, he's a physician by profession, trained in Pakistan, migrated to the US in 1978, did his residency in Detroit, and practiced in New York City thereafter. And mashallah, very successful in his medical career, roles including president of the Society in Brooklyn, which had more than 6,000 members of physicians, and various leadership roles in medicine. And as mentioned, his poetry, mashallah, really took off in his early 40s. And he is, to the best of our knowledge, the author of the first book of Naat in the Urdu language that was published in Urdu. And that was his first book on Abd. And if you go to his website, drrahman.us, drrahman.us, you'll find all of his works there. And we're really honored and privileged to have him here as part of the community. Resides in Staten Island, where he's been involved in much of the political for years, but mashallah, we're our for today.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Brother Sajid, and thank you, Amir, for beautiful words. As most of you that are present here know that somehow or the other, I fell in love with something called poetry. And it grew out of me when I celebrated my 40th birthday. Relationship of number 40 to certain things in life is very interesting and intriguing, and it's a good thing to really look into. But something did happen, and I saw within me there is something that is trying to come out. So poetry started, and I had to really relearn the languages, because after living in America for so many years and speaking only English and nothing else, even at home, it was very difficult. But with effort and with paying attention to this thing as a not only a hobby but as a profession of sorts, I learned Urdu and I got some of my Persian back. Then I realized that there is a responsibility that we all have. The generation that was somehow or the other exposed to Persian literature in early years, realizing that the Persian influence on Urdu language was significant at the time. Early poets in India, subcontinent of South Asia, whosoever was yearning for a higher education from Hindi and Urdu, they went up to Persian. And most of the literature in poetry that was done by high caliber or famous poets was significant volumes in Persian also. One had to really know that. Make this point only because Persian influence from the language of Urdu has at least been more or less disappeared now. And Urdu language as it stands still has a whole lot of vocabulary addiction that comes from Persian language. To really understand the poetry of Iqbal or Ghalib or Mir or Bedel, one really has to have significant poetry and knowledge of Persian. Myself, I was born in Kashmir. There is a local language that I grew up with. My mother tongue was Pahari. I had to learn Punjabi, then I had to learn Urdu. A little bit of Farsi I learned in middle school was helpful. And by some effort now, I got my interest back in Urdu. And I feel responsibility that some of that literature, let's say Rumi's literature or Iqbal's literature and Ghalib's literature that is in Persian, unless somebody makes it easy for the next generation, the generations to come, unless it gives it in a palatable way that they can really at least be exposed to it and then draw from it, then they might actually not even know about it. And that particular literature may lose all its market and may lose all the interest. That should not happen because we have so much wealth in Rumi's literature, Rumi's poetry, that is all in Persian, that unless we either teach Persian to our children, which we obviously then we have to translate it in English so that they at least get the message. Once they get interest into that, they on their own effort in optional languages and learn from what Rumi had to say. So that vein, in that effort, we thought that we at least have some kind of a discourse in Rumi poetry and Iqbal poetry Persian. And then as we educate ourselves and remind ourselves of what we knew or learned during our early years, we can probably pass on something to our children at home. The way I see it is down the road, things are changing. We are becoming a global village. Wherever we are being raised now, moving into different areas, different countries, it's becoming fairly easy now. And in that vein, in the beginning, when people used to take second language or third language, it used to be either English or French or German or Spanish. I see in future that our children and grandchildren probably will be opting for Persian or Urdu as their languages. And if they do that, we have to make sure that the literature that we have right now, that many of the bookstores in India and Pakistan or even in Iran now, are probably storing these things in upper shelves because nobody is reading that. And not many people are interested in older literature, not part of their syllabus. So in that case, we may end up losing this treasure. The purpose is not to lose this treasure, but we can at least make it palatable. Example that I gave, now I will mention about my translating Shikwa. When I translated Shikwa, made it fairly easy. Took Shikwa's Urdu portion, took its difficult words and called it Logat, gave the meanings of it on one side. Then I gave this Salis or a Ravan Tarjuma, a flown translation of that. And then I gave the mafhum of it as to what it really contains, what the message is. Similarly, on the opposite side, I wrote the same verse, that's Urdu verse, in English alphabet, but in transliteration. So when I said Khat, K-H-A-T, if somebody knows Khat by at least spoken Urdu, and by reading K-H-A-T, they will be able to relate it. And underneath I wrote English, simple and English, as to what really the message is in those verses. And this way, a person who does not really know how to read Urdu alphabet, Persian alphabet, and at least read English translation or Urdu translation, words, and learn from it. The magnetism that is contained in these messages then will draw the reader to expand further on their knowledge and get deeper into it. So that was the intention. So when we suggested we talk methodically now about Rumi's message and give 10 rules of Rumi's law, we thought we'll make it simple and start from the basics. So the first topic that I picked was Ishq, or love. And the reason I picked that is because if we were to take Islamic literature, Islamic philosophy, Islamic teaching, then first thing that comes to your mind is Ishq, is love, because that is the basis for creation of the universe and for homogeny and this balance that exists between each creation. All the planets, solar system, galaxies, all living together are living in a coexisting and mutually respectable way, knowing exactly what their responsibility is, keeping their relationship to each other. So, moving this universe moving forward. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, one of the name is Wadud. Wadud is love. And somebody who loves is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Christian theology, John's saying is God is love. And all humanity is same to him. He loves all his creation. And if you have love, you have God. And if you do not have love, you do not have God. That's a very simplified way of really introducing love. In Islamic literature, one reads, there is a certain hadith that is mentioned. Others may say that it's not may not be hadith. It may be a saying of different people after Prophet ﷺ. But be that as it may, that particular hadith basically also refers to the same thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is love, and he wanted to be known, and he created this universe and introduced himself to the universe and let them then introduce him. He wanted to be known, he wanted to manifest, and creation that they can identify him and he will be known. So again, the basis is love. So what I thought today to do was to talk a little bit about what love is and take a few verses of Rumi that deals with Ishq, take a few verses of that deal with Ishq and translate them for us. And then we can stand on this knowledge on our own. One can talk about it lifetime. As a matter of fact, if you pick poetry of Rumi and take poetry of Iqbal, which basically is a disciple of Rumi and a student of Rumi, although he came several hundred years after him, 500 years to be exact. The basic message is the same: the love and the understanding of yourself and why you are on this planet and what is the purpose. All of this revolves around this. I cannot get over this fact that how so many verses and so many volumes they were able to express this particular feeling, this particular sentiment, and yet you can create more and more verses. Being a poet, I can say that you can simply create more and more verses based on love, and yet the love will not be really totally covered. Our comprehensive discussion of love will not be possible because it's such a vast subject. It's really something that is within us and outside of us. So let me, for the sake of time, start with Rumi's verse. And Rumi says, "Ine man az ishq zinda budanast." Ine man az ishq zinda budanast. Zindagi ni jano than nange manas. Ine man, our religion, our faith, as ishq, from love, zinda budanast, is alive, is being recognized. Zindagi ni jano than, life with this body and this soul, nange manas, is really a disgrace for us if we only live by our soul, our nafs, and by our body, unless we recognize that ishq is the basis of our life, then this is really a shame that we don't really have the meaning of love. So let me say that again. Rumi says that if ine man as ishq zinda, our faith or our religion is alive and well and active only and only by love, by passion. Our life with this body and with this soul without love is really an embarrassment or a shame. Nang is something that disgraces you, that really is a kind of a stand on you if you really have not recognized the purpose of life. So this is where Rumi is starting. Then he says, Shareish Kazman Bagoyam Bardavam Ad Kayamat Bagudar Wa An Natamam. Ad Kayamat Bagudar Do An Natamam. Yes. If I can continue to talk about love, this is amazing. If I continue to talk about love all my life without taking a pause, there will be hundreds of lifetimes and Qiyamah will come, hundreds of Qiyamahs of Yawm Hashr, and yet the discussion of love will not be complete. That is how vast this subject. Imagine we are trying to cover it in 30 minutes. It's not going to happen. But we are trying to inspire ourselves to learn more and recognize what we are. We are love. Love is our essence, our being. That is what really gives energy and light to our being. So that was one. Then Rumi says, Ishkra hafsad paras o har pare as farade arsh ta tahtus sara. We read it in Urdu that way. Ishkra hafsad paras o har pare. For love, there are 700 wings. And every wing, as farade arsh ta tahtus sara, is each wing is from the height of the skies all the way to the depths of the earth. Each wing is that big and that wide. There are 700 wings like that. But Ishq, how large a subject Ishq is as Rumi sees it. Then he talks about what Ishq does when it is contained in human being, in human body. How you have to actually recognize it, and how you have to use it. And there I have given this verse. Aql Ahmad, Dunya Haram. Ishq Ahmad, Dardo Alam Amya. That's an easy one to understand. When intelligence came and intellect came into human beings, then their world, their hereafter actually messed up or became bad. In other words, when they use their intellect and brain, try to understand the purpose of life, then they actually missed the point, messed it all up. Ishq Ahmad Dardo Alam Amaya. When passion came into their life, love came into their life, and they became successful in both worlds, this world as well as the world hereafter. Fairly easy thing to understand. Yet if one internalizes it, then you realize that many times, sometimes you will have to realize that you have to make a decision. Although you may think that this looks dangerous, looks unhealthy, or may not be the right thing to do because your intellect is trying to analyze it, see the pros and cons of it, what can be benefit, what can be the damage or the loss, and the intellect will sometimes weigh on the wrong side, but it really cannot comprehend the depth of the meaning behind these reactions. And the ishq is involved. Then ishq does not necessarily look at the gain or the loss of the time. Ishq goes by its inner feeling. It comes from the voice of your heart, and it tells you do something, not question. Ishq cautions you all the time and more or less hesitates in taking an action. But ishq, aql does that. But ishq does not hesitate one bit. Ishq immediately follows beloved's orders, the message or desire, and takes the action immediately and is totally oblivious to what might happen. So, there is a verse from another poet, he says that, how does it start? It says, "Ishq hai main ve, aql hai main ve tamashaye labe bami." Aql gar, हाँ, बेखतर कूद पड़ा आतिश नमरूद में इश्क, और अक्ल है मैं वे तमाशाए लबे बाम अभी, बेखतर fearlessly कूद पड़ा, jumped into आतिश नमरूद में इश्क, in the fire of Nimrod or Namrud. Ishq, passion, jumped fearlessly into the fire that was lit by Namrud to burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. But aql hai main ve tamashaye labe baam abhi. Aql, the intellect, main ve tamasha, is still looking at labe baam, at the edge of the roof from where he had to jump. He's looking at the roof and the edge of the roof and trying to see how far is the fire and how far he has to jump, and calculating where to jump with the least amount of hurt or whatever. Is trying to see the profit and loss, what will happen. But Ishq does not hesitate and jumps in fire, and that's what Ibrahim alayhi salam did when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message came along. The friendship, and Namrud did not really like that, because so much after, against what Nimrud was doing in his kingdom, and Namrud had ordered Ibrahim alayhi salam burnt in fire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to save his friend Faridullah. So even we are told that even when Ibrahim alayhi salam was there, the angels would come and say, if you want, we can have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save you. He said, no, he's watching me, and if he knows, and if he wants me to jump into it and face the consequences, then I have no hesitation. So he did not want to be saved, despite many recommendations came to him from different angels. Finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to do what he had to do to save his friend. He told the fire to come for him, a place of ease, and it became like a garden for him, a bed of roses, a bed of flowers. It didn't burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you can see when Ishq goes to climax, it can do certain things that are otherwise intellectually very difficult to even comprehend or understand the meaning of. In another one, referring to the travel of Miraj that our beloved Prophet did, like journey to the heavens, there Iqbal also says, इश्क की एक जस्त ने तय कर दिया किस्सा तमाम, इस जमीन और आसमान को बेकरार समझा. The love wanted to take a journey of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala between him and his beloved Prophet. When the beloved was to be taken up for a journey to meet face to face by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then all of this happened within a split second. The whole universe totally came standstill. Whatever between these two had to happen, continued to happen. There was a certain portion of time that was frozen, and the other portion was really doing all of this that had to be done, from traveling from Makkah to Medina Sharif, and then from there to first sky and heaven, then above, whatever discourse. Then is returned back to his bed. All of that happened at a certain speed that we are difficult to really comprehend. Yet we are told in no uncertain terms in the scripture that's exactly what happened. And we cannot say that it did not happen. So how did this happen? Intellect or your brain or your intelligence will take centuries and still not really be able to come to any reasonable or plausible explanation for it. Yet, when it came to love, it did not take a moment. It happened 1, 2, 3, it was done. So that is what love can do. Now, for interest of time, I will go over just briefly 2 verses of Iqbal, and then I'll talk briefly as to what love is. I realize that it's really difficult in a short span of time to expand on this subject. Iqbal says, Ishq dar jaan, tu bachash mandar nazar, ham darune khana, ham bairune dar. He says, Ishq dar jaan, passion or love in your body, in your physical being is tu bachash mandar nazar, like the vision is inside your eye. The vision that your eye has that is how love is in your being, in your body. Hum darune khana, it's inside you also. Hum bairune dar, and it's outside the door also. Inside also it's existing. Love is within you also, just as much as it is outside, just like the light or the vision is inside the eye also as it is outside. Where is the vision inside the eye? You would say, I see you right now, I see this picture right now. This picture is forever preserved in my memory somewhere in a file. Anytime I think of this first session of Rumi, physical session inside this masjid, I will be able to see this particular vision, this particular scene will come into my mind and I'll be able to visit it. That's how this vision is. Similarly, love or ishq is within us in such a way that it's part of our being. It is within us if we appreciate it, or recognize it, or actually have the ability to see that what we are really experiencing is love, our passion. Now, when it comes to explaining love, what it is, and how one develops it, how one perfects it, one has to realize that we have been given an easy method of really comprehending things, and then trying to decipher it or understand it. Example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His scriptures says that He has created the heavens and earth and all these stars and skies, and each one of them is revolving it around its own orbit. Then they are in the orbit, relationship to each other, they are expanding constantly, and yet keeping that relationship between each other. Science could not understand it. If I was reading Al-Quran 1400 years ago, I really could not understand. We thought that the earth was flat, and somewhere down there is the end of the earth, and Columbus tried to look for it. He wanted to see the end of the earth on the other side of the ocean. That's how he discovered this America, and we are here today. Thank you, Columbus, for discovering it. But all of this was incomprehensible at that time. Yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge was transmitted in there. Humans, our intellect took some time to understand it. Similarly, so many other things today are unknown to science. Some of them are coming into understanding now. We could not imagine, even 100 years ago, that a time will come when you will be sitting in one part of the globe and people across the globe will be seeing you instantly at the same time. You will be seen by everybody at the same moment, as if he is the only one or she is the only one seeing you. This is so amazing now, and yet I remember when we were little growing up, they were saying a time will come, you will hear the sound from the laces of your shoe, something like a lace of your shoe to speak. But there was a tape that started, let's say 40, 50 years ago, that we had on our cameras at the time, and the video recordings also, and prior to that video, just the audio recording. So human intellect and intelligence is an education system also is evolving. It will continue to evolve. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom is beyond all of that. The knowledge that is with Him is so vast and so huge that regardless of how much science can say that it knows, it will take centuries and centuries and yet may not even know, like a drop from the ocean. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave part of his knowledge to Adam when he was created. And that knowledge gave him the superiority over the angels and other creation at the time. And based on that knowledge, Adam alayhi salam and his progeny or his descendants now were given that particular responsibility of being agents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or vicegerents, call them in English language, so that they can do the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on his behalf with his permission, of course, and with his izn. Without that, you cannot really even move anything. So we are given that ability to an extent that we can run our affairs and try to understand his creation, but we should never approach anything with the thought that we know what we are doing. First thing to do is to realize that you don't know much, don't know anything. One thing that I should really bring out here is that human brain is one organ of our body that is not fully developed when we are born. Our eyes have the same size almost when we are born as they will ever have. They really don't grow in size much. Brain, on the other hand, functionally is very, very weak at the time of birth. And the connections and different synapses and different kind of evolvement processes that take place in the development of man take a long time. And if a person until the age of 20, 25, 30 may not have a fully developed brain that can really function optimally. Now, children understand to a certain point, but still do not have that comprehension. I just want to allude to the fact Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Rahman says, Allamahul Bayan. And I created, number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman is after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's personal name. This is his most high name, Ar-Rahman. Allama al-Quran. Quran is the best of the books, best of the revelations. The one that is the really the full and total message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Khalaq al-Insan. Insan is the best creation, the whole universe. Allamahul Bayan. Bayan is his best ability. This is what I wanted to come. Bayan of a human being is his best ability. That is not simply speech. That is the comprehension, understanding of his universe, trying to see why things are the way they are, appropriately responding to it. It's an amazing ability. We respond to things appropriately by understanding it. Sometimes we have to speak quiet, sometimes we have to speak softly, sometimes you have to be a little vociferous and forceful to make your point. All of that comes with age. As you realize, we are very, very vocal when we are little. You ask something 2 + 2 and they have raised their hand and they know exactly what they're doing. Yet, as you get older and older and older, you are very humble, you are soft, take your time, you are very patient. People may be very, very harsh with you, rough with you, and yet you do not get angry very easily. You are humble. And this evolution of brain really goes, the capacity for the brain to develop the soul around mid-20s or somewhere there. After that, utility of this takes a long time. So Bayan is an amazing ability that humans have, that other creation is not. Now, of course, there is a whole lot to be said about this, but I'll move on and now describe what love is, how really to describe it. I want to do this in the first session simply so that we can lay the ground. But when we talk about other things in other sessions that will follow, most of them will be basically referring back to this particular little thing that we have in our heart where the love resides. So love starts basically first with respect. Adab pehla karina hai मोहब्बत के करीब हूँ. In the skills of love and passion, adab is the first one. Being respectful and being humble and just being available for other stimulus or voice or person that is in front of you. Respectfully, humbly receive what you have. That is adab. That is the beginning. Unless you really have adab, you really cannot even receive it. If somebody is not interested in a particular topic or a lecture, if they do not connect to it and if they really do not even establish that initial thing, maybe I'll get something out of it. If they don't do that, then all of it will be wasted. They will not be able to receive it. It's like bringing a flask, putting it out in the rain, but turning it upside down, or keeping it up but not taking the lid off. So all the rain in the world will fall all around it, but it will never get inside. So first thing is to be ready to receive. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is right after the opening chapter, Fatiha and Al-Baqarah, and the very first couple of verses, it says, this is the guidance only for those who are God conscious, who are aware that there is deity or a divinity around us that is watching over us, that is here, is present, and it's with His grace and mercy that we are here today. Once you accept that, that is the first one. Then the method starts to open up to you. If you do not, if you say that unless I see God, unless I know that He exists, I cannot believe that this is His message, this is His book, then you can have this Quran with you all your life. You can really be a PhD in so many things, in theology also. And yet you will not get guidance from this book at all, because you did not have the very first step. Adab is first. Then after adab, you start to get a little bit of attachment. Now, then it becomes pyar, a little bit of more feeling, a positive feeling for that thing. Then it becomes muhabba. It becomes, when it's muhabba, then it really becomes a two-way thing almost. You start to feel something and then the attraction on the entity that you are facing. Then muhabba becomes sincere and makes an effort to further understand or further have a discourse, the person that is in front of you, then it starts to get to the levels of ishq. And when it becomes ishq, then it is something that you want all the time. And regardless of whether it's going to hurt you or it's going to help you, you will basically do exactly what your beloved tells you. That becomes ishq. Majnu was an example of that. We have already given the ishq ilahi. So that ishq also was Ismail alayhi salam, that was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a blessing from his father, that he did not even question when his father said that I'll put a knife to your neck. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted that. At that age, he was able to submit to it without even wincing, without even showing displeasure to his father, that it might hurt me and this and that. That is ishq. How did he get that ishq? That was a given ishq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh, audio. So as the gradations, as the level of your kind of attraction or your attachment increases, ishq then becomes a self-governing force within you. And then it takes your life to the direction that you should be going. And once that ishq is introduced to you, then this world totally becomes irrelevant. You become really into the love of your creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you are now making a journey that really wants to bring you one-to-one to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how close you want to get to Him. And then a stage comes whether you either become baqa billah, which means you live alongside or with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but keep your separate identity, or you become fana fillah, you become absorbed into His being, so you become part of Him. Don't forget that we are told that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed from His ruh into, from his nur into Adam alayhi salam. And that nur within us, that spark is part of divinity that is in us. And once we pass on from this world and our ruh goes back, our spark that we have within us goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that has its own life that lives on. That's a matter and a topic for another time. But this journey of love is something that really can bring out from within us, from within humans, things that are unbelievable in this life. People would do things that are into this ishq to a degree that people that see them performing those actions would not be able to believe their eyes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do anything and everything that he pleases. And when he wants to manifest his power, he does that sometimes through his creation. And humans are best suited for this, to recognize this. Allama Iqbal has taken this symbolically into a philosophy of Khudi, whereby he talks about development of your inner being, yourself within you, to the point where you really have the powers that are beyond this world. And that Khudi, when you develop it, is the one that really gives you the mirage of life, that you realize the purpose of life, the capabilities that you have within you, then you can really travel anywhere you want in the world, do anything you want to do with permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and yet find nothing so difficult to so hard about this. I once saw a little skip on a television in a Christian program, whereby they showed a accident on the roadside, and the person that was driving the car was alone and was obviously unconscious or injured on the roadside, and a couple stopped by, a husband and a wife, and they took him there, put them in his car, took him into a hospital, and gave him to the doctor that they took care of this person and he recovered and whatever. And after a few days after being at home, when he came back to that hospital, he saw the picture of a husband and wife. They were the founders of that hospital. They were the same two people that had brought him from that accident place a few weeks ago, and they had passed on 100 years ago. And they had built, foundation had built the hospital in their name and this and that, and he recognized them like he recognized his own parents. So this is happening, but people may be oblivious to how this kingdom, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is running. Secret of all of this is to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his message without asking for a proof. If you are given a map from here to, let's say, Princeton downtown, and Sajid Bhai gives it to me, rather than for me to say, well, I don't know if this map is, this road really exists or not. Where did you get this, Sajid Bhai? Who gave it to you? I don't know. Have you really drawn this? No, I took it from this store. If I go into analyzing the validity of this roadmap, it may take me a long time to get to my destination. But if I take that as a fact and follow the route, I'll be there in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Purpose of giving this analogy is that when we are talking about the world of the unseen and things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, first thing to realize is our knowledge is nothing compared to knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second thing to realize is that once we have this thing written in front of us and given to us by somebody who was Sadiq and Amin, then we have absolutely no reason to doubt any of it. And with that sincerity, when you approach with the truth opens up to you and you really get to the destination much faster. Only those who have that respect and that presence of mind to realize this will be able to get to the truth fairly easily. There is a story that my son told me when he was in high school, that his teacher had actually heard that he's a Muslim and whatever. And she somehow there remarked and she put a little something in the school bag. I don't know if he remembers it or not. I'm talking about Ahmed. I read that and I was amazed as to how that Jewish lady had given, a teacher had given him that little thing. She said they were the peak of a mountain. The people, the mountaineers wanted to go to the top. They were devising as to what the gear they should have, how much rope they need, how much kind of shoes they need. They would go around that mountain every year to see what weather, when the rains come and the snow comes, and they started a route and stuff like that. And they took several years in measuring, and finally they went to the top of the mountain, only to see Sufis, believers in God, were camped there for years. They were their companions. They knew them from before. The Sufis asked them, what took you guys so long to get here? There were some people who believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He took them up there. That's all they needed to know. And others took their worldly means to get up there and took them much longer. The fact is the same. The peak of the mountain is the same. And yet some people go through life very easily. Others take forever. Moses one day was walking through the meadows and he saw a shepherd tending to his flock, the sheep and stuff. And as Moses walked by, he heard him. The shepherd was saying, oh Allah, I'm your friend. I love you so much. If you were here, I will comb your hair. I'll wash your clothes, wash your shoes. I'll wash your feet. And I will make you a cup of tea. I will take care of you. I love you so much. And I would really, if I could just be with you, I would just really take care of you. Moses saw that and heard that. He was shocked that what kind of a concept this shepherd has about God. He thinks he's a human being, he needs clothes, he needs a cup of tea, he needs to have his feet washed. So Moses tried to tell him, listen, say astaghfirullah and ask for forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he does not have hands and feet like me and you do. And he doesn't need any of these from you. So you have kind of been disrespectful. So repent and feel sorry, because God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is free of all these wants. And Moses said all of this, of course, the shepherd was very much scared after listening to all of this, and he got very disappointed and started to cry. Became very sad. And as Moses walked away, he heard something from top. Oh, Moses, what did you do to my friend? Look what did you do. You hurt his feelings. You broke his heart. He's crying. The friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not depend on your intelligence or your understanding. Know that he sees you, he understands you. Not that you will ever understand him to the extent that he should be understood, or you will see him the way he is. You will never be able to really perceive that. But once that understanding comes to you, that I will really not be able to do justice to the knowledge about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and my knowledge is limited compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge, then he draws you towards him, because he is the one that brings it. He is the one who brings light into people's hearts and gives them the knowledge. Love comes from him. You have to have that kind of a love and passion. This is why there is a verse in Al-Quran also, that if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to love you, love me, is the Prophet ﷺ said. Basically saying, tell them they should love you and follow you, and then Allah will love them. It doesn't say that then your love will be answered. Then it says, Fattabi'uni yuhibbukumullah. Follow me and Allah will love you, because that, when it starts from there, anything and everything is possible. So we should really Number one, understand that how much, regardless of how much we learn and know, we will never know enough. Number two, if we want to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we have to love his creation. And this will be another topic. Human beings and how they should be treated. Creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how should it be created? There's a story about one person who looked very evil, or somebody who was not very known for good action and stuff. And people in paradise saw him in paradise making merry and looking very happy. And they said, how did he get here? And we are amazed that, till the end of his life, we felt differently about him, and yet he's one of the close people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Turns out that he had one day encountered a thirsty animal on the side. Was it a deer or whatever animal was? I forget now from the hikayat that I read. That he saw that, and he went out of his way to get something, milk or water or whatever else, and fed that, and took that animal out of the harm's way and saved that harm. And that particular deed itself was so pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he forgave all his sins and he gave him a high place in Jannah. So when you take care of his creation, and that is usually through love. If you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the love, that's why you hear the proverb, for the love of God, do this. So if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do it for him. Not that the person or the act that you think is deserving of this kindness from you, but do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you make the path of his creation a little bit easy by removing an obstacle from the road, even that is very pleasing, an act of worship. When you become obedient and God conscious and feel his presence around you because of the love that you have for him, then every act in your life becomes an act of worship. Whatever you do, whether you're earning a livelihood for your children, whether you're saying nice things to your children or anything around you, whether you take care of his creation, the pets that you have, anything that you do then becomes an act of worship. You do not really have to seclude yourself and sit there somewhere and do only Allahu and nothing else. That's good too. However, you can attain basically a close rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Love within you manifests to the full extent. Imagine Rumi's funeral. When he passed on, there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that attended the funeral. We are told that the majority of them were non-Muslims, non-believers. Anybody that encountered Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi became attached to him, close to him, immediately fell in love with his presence because he had smile and he had an approach for everyone, whether they were people of God or not. And by just associating with Rumi, whether they accepted Islam or not, that is a matter between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and them. But imagine the approach Rumi had. All his disciples also, basically the same thing. Sufis that follow a spiritual path of self-purification, they also have the same approach. They love all the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They sometimes interact with people of all kinds of faiths with respect for them. Not saying that, I can't talk to you because you're not part of this clan, part of this faith system. No, Sufis basically become a lover of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why, by the way, Sufism has taken on in all divine religions and others that do not believe in God. Even they have Sufism. There is a universal spirituality and Sufism that people have that do not believe in God. Agnostics also have Sufism or spirituality that is connecting to God, having that love for him, and yet not really, reciting Shahada. So somehow or the other, a time comes when that power of love really can show you the glory of the manifestations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are around us all the time. Now, how these people spiritually are are clean and how well they connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only He knows best. But it's an eye-opener to realize that when you love His creation, now He's the one who puts people in certain places. He's the one that who made us born in a certain family. It was easy on us. He's the one that makes others being born into different families, non-believers. They play a certain part for us to interact with them, see how we interact with them. So loving His creation, loving His people, whether they are somebody we like or not, that is the test we have. And one germ that is beneficial in that is the germ of love. I deliberately left out one part of love, that from what did I say? From the beginning, when you have respect, then you have pyar, then you have muhabba, then you have ishq, and in between there are ishq ilahi, ishq hakiki, ishq majazi, and ishq rasul. Ishq majazi is the love of the creation of God. If you love them, you are practicing ishq majazi. If you love a being of beloved Prophet, ishq rasul, that is part of our faith. That is something essential ingredient of believers. This, in fact, is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ishq hakiki is the ultimate of this. That you love our beloved Prophet and his family to the point that you are willing to give away your own life and everything you have, including your family and your children. Then you have developed ishq rasul, and that is a path to ishq hakiki. When you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this universe is yours. Then your eyes open up, and some of those people who have those eyes that are open become so oblivious to this world that they may be here and yet they are not here. They may look shabby or unkept to you, just like Shams Tabriz did to Maulana Rum when he showed up in one of his sessions when he was teaching his students. And that is an interesting story. Let me finish by giving that. When Maulana Rum was ready to receive the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, internalize it, then Shams Tabriz appeared out of somewhere in a session when he was teaching his students. He had his books, manuscripts written by hand with pen and the ink that used to be prevalent at the time. Books sitting like this, stacked up, students sitting around, and Maulana Shams Tabriz comes in. He says, "What is all this?" And Maulana says, "This is something that you know nothing about." And then he continues to teach the students. Maulana, after about a few seconds, he comes up and he throws these books. They fall into the water, into the pond, on the wuzu place that they had nearby, I suppose, or a pond or a talab, whatever it was. Couldn't have been a swimming pool, but who knows. Anyway, they fell in there, and now students were obviously angry, and Maulana was upset that all my effort, all my work of so many years, he was around 40 at the time, close to it, has been wasted. And when they looked at him and he says, "What did you do?" And they started to be a little bit rough. He got up, he put his hand into the water, went down, brought the book, put one book at a time, and would dust it. The dust would come out and it was dry. Take the second one, dust it, and it would be dry like it was before. Maulana looked at him and he said, "What is this?" And Shams Tabriz says, "This is something you know nothing about." And that was the changing point of Maulana Rum. From that life on, age 40, he becomes Maulana Rumi. Prior to that, he was Rumi. He was Balakhi Rumi, Jalaluddin. Then he became Maulana Rum. His life changed so much, so fast, that he gave up all his teaching, and his students were upset, the organization was upset and all that. Yet, that relationship really gave him the light and the nur within his heart, that guidance then made him what he is. People around that time, there were so many kings and this and that have come and gone. We are sitting here now 800 years after being out of this world, and yet we remember him and we can visualize him and we are benefiting from his knowledge. That only comes from love that he emanated. The love that he gave is coming back to him, will continue to come back to him until the day of judgment. So this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the universe. He is love. He has put love into our hearts. We have to understand that love, connect with that. He calls that part as our khudi, spiritual being. Nurture it from that world to remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surround yourself with people that are really on the same path. Make yourself a little bit easy. And then eventually you will become an embodiment of love and the system will come. I think I should stop here for questions and answers. And the purpose of these sessions basically is to learn from each other also. And I am on the lookout for Rumi scholars and spiritualists in this country or whosoever visits here. Whenever we find anybody anywhere, inshallah, we'll invite them up here and make them join and we will learn from them. Again, we will inshallah develop a group of people that are into this particular journey and hopefully come up at the end, whenever that is, with a compilation of books that we should be able to write. We should be the transition from an era of 560 years ago to an era that will follow us 20 to 30 years from today. So that all universities and colleges in this country are equipped with scholarly work about Iqbal, about Rumi, about Razi, about Ghazali, and about others that have really done spiritual work. There is a need for this. That is the motivating force for me to do it. I can do as I can, but I have spent my life in the profession of medicine. I was given very little time, but I am taking benefit of that time, really moving forward with it. I want all of us to join me in this caravan, hopefully, caravan of Rumi and Iqbal. Jazakumullah. Please. Any questions, comments? Please. Thank you so much. Then was, we would call it pyar, but you would say ta'alluq, a connection. First is respect you do, then you develop a connection. That is pyar. That is the earliest stage of connecting with the person. Because that is before muhabbat. The pyar or lagao. You have to then change your direction, try to move that way. First you respect it. If somebody was sitting there on 10th row and liked something here, developed a little bit of respect for this kind of a thing, then they will try to connect with it. Then they will have a feeling that will wake up in him. That takes its own way, and that will guide you as to how to move forward. Once I feel that, if you feel somebody really appreciates you and has a positive feeling for you, this heart moves towards that heart automatically. You can, in a crowd of 50 people, see people that really are feeling positive about you versus those that are annoyed by this. Some of them will get up and walk away. Others will basically be oblivious, talk to each other, do this, and they may not be into it. Message is not for them. It's only for those that really can connect. That once you do that, and after that starts muhabbat, then the ishq manwils. Then ishq, once that starts to come in, then there is nobody can argue you out of it. Then it becomes janoon and then the actual love. Okay. Good question. Thank you so much for asking. When, yes, what Mahbub is, the beloved is called Mahbub. When he loves you, then you become his friend, as a matter of fact. Mahbub he already has. So you can be his friend. Okay? You become his friend, his helper in a way. Yeah, well, the question basically Sajid Bhai asked was that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, then what are you called? And the suggestion was it could be Mahbub. Yes, you could be a Mahbub of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many that are Mahbub. But again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves all his creation, point number one. Number two, when he has specific eye on some, then they become chosen ones. Now the system of prophecy, or prophethood is gone. He still needs his beloved people to run his affairs. See, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to receive $10 from him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to put in my pocket here. He's going to put this thought in his head, and he will come down and give it to me. And what is this for? And he will say, you forgot. 10 years ago when we met somewhere, I took this $10 from you because I needed it for parking. You forgot about it, but I'm giving it. Then you will suddenly remember, even if you did not give him $10, that thought will come to you. You will start imagining, you will believe that to be true. This is a step further I'm going. In other words, you may be doing 4 rakahs of fard prayer. You only did 3. You finished and you think you have done 4. You have done 4. Because your knee was hurting. He didn't want you to really do more of that. He made you believe you did 4. Have that faith in you. You don't have to keep doing sajda for the mistake again and again. That is love. He can actually make you do things easy for you, and yet you may not realize that it's happening to you. Great questions, Ajit bhai.
Awliya of Allah.
Khudi. In a simple way, and I don't want to take too much of your time, there is a spiritual spark within us. There is that spark that was blown into us when we were born. Our arwah were created millenniums of years ago. One by one, they come and join the body. Imagine you are 4 months in the uterus before you are born. That spirit comes into you, does not want to come in, that it was really enjoying up there the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now it's time for that you to come into this physical body and live on this earth, then go back after you die. That spirit, whatever it creates around you, is your spiritual being. Iqbal calls that as khudi. When it come in, you have practically no elimination at all, probably, or whatever elimination you have is destroyed when you are 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, because you are in an environment which may not be spiritual at all. Now you have to recognize and develop that recognition of the Creator. That recognition gradually grows. That khudi now is developing. This body gets the nourishment from this earth. So you eat the corn, the meat, the chicken, and this and that. This gets strong. But khudi within you only grows with spirituality and with recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. And by that, and recognizing and really remembering Him all the time, doing good deeds, develop khudi. That khudi is your personality. That could be, imagine like a heart, like this, all dark. Then it starts to cleanse, becomes very transparent. That khudi is developed to a certain point, the reflection of God comes into it. Then you can start connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can connect it. This is why Maulana starts his Masnavi by saying Vishnu was there. Hikayat mi kunal, was judai ha, ayat mi kunal. That bansuri, that flute, one end is connected to you, or you are blowing it, and the other sound comes out. You are like that sound creation, and he is the one blowing it. Now a time comes when you are hollow and you become like a flute, so that when he blows from there, the sound comes out of you. That is fully developed Khudi when you are connected to God. And Allah blows into your bansuri, the sound comes from your bansuri, so to speak. So Maulana has used that analogy very beautifully, that take the stick, hollow it up, make holes into it from the worldly difficulties. And if it's all dusted and if it's all rusty and if it's not really hollow, it may not create a sound. But when it's ready and you have thrown away the worldly things, hollowed yourself of this world, then he can blow into it and then you can hear his voice. Khudi fully developed, connection to God. Khudi totally gone, oblivion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not even realizing why you're here and living a life like an animal. Self. Arafat Rabba. Yes, yes. That hadith is worth repeating, that brother. I'm glad that you mentioned it. Man arafa nafsa, faqad arafa rabba. In other words, whosoever recognized himself, recognized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recognizing yourself, recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means exactly that. That nafs, once you recognize who you are, although the word nafs is used here as a soul, but with the discussion that we have now, we have gone from the nafs all onto a different point, which is really beyond soul also. It's that spark of Khudi that is within us. That is ruh. That is the ruh that is part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's breath. That is different, a little bit different than the way we are using nafs these days. But that is the point. Whosoever knows himself knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a great point to finish this discussion at. Inshallah, unless somebody has any other points, until we meet next week. By the way, the topics that are coming, inshallah, will be just as interesting. Those who are into this particular kind of a journey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us on the right path and give us the vision and ability to understand his message. If you want me to just replicate, I'll do that. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are gathered here in your house using your wasila, you're using your presence around us. Guide us and give us the vision so that we can expand on and expand the message that you have given us through your message, through your book, through your messenger, through all the messengers that you have sent to this world. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are in a situation where we are raising our families, our children, in an environment where we are afraid that they may not be able to keep the faith unless it's your special mercy and grace and vision that you can bestow upon them. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect them from all evil, give them the right instruction, the right guidance, and give us the ability to expand on your message. Keep clarity so that we can deliver the message and be good to ourselves. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us the vision, the ability to recognize ourselves. We can develop within us the spiritual being that is really part of you and becomes one with you. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, save us from hellfire, save us from misguidance, and save us from all the evil that is. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Salamun ala al-mursaleen. Amen. Yeah. Good to meet you, brother. How are you? What is your full name? Pura name. Full name. Javan Mer, this is what I was remembering. Javan Mer. So you are the one that Rumi was looking for. He said that, look, all I see is animals around. I'm looking for a Rustam. I'm looking for a see you. Let me see you. Oh, I remember one Saturday. You probably on you. And either Zoom or maybe you were in activity. I remember. Yeah. Who is this young man? My younger brother. He is? I can see that. I can.
No.
I could recognize your voice from the seconds. So nice to meet you. What's your name? Happy, okay, I'm Zahid. What's your name? Yeah, he could be your brother. You look young.